नमस्कार मित्र हो. इयत्ता 12वी सेक्रेटरी प्रॅक्टिस या विषयाच्या या व्हिडिओ लेक्चरमध्ये आपणा सर्वांचं हार्दिक स्वागत. बिफोर starting this lecture, I just revised what we studied in previous lectures. The main focus of previous lecture on the retained earnings and its determinants. Before that we studied sources of corporate finance, shares, features of shares, equity shares, features of equity shares, types of equity shares, preference shares, its features and types. So in this video lecture we discuss the remaining part of retained earnings, which is not covered in our textbook but which is important while writing short note and answering the question on retained earning for justify. The content is advantages of retained earnings. So the first point, cheapest source of finance. When a company use retained earnings through the process of capitalization of profit by issuing equity shares as a permanent capital, and as we discussed earlier, retained earning is internal source of finance for that company does not require to pay any expenditure compared to other source of finance or other source of external finance. It is less costly method as compared to others. To use retained earnings as a capital in the business requires only to issue bonus shares to equity shareholder, which provide a permanent capital to the company and approval from them in general meeting. To raise finance through retained earnings, company does not require to follow a lengthy procedure like the procedure is followed by company while issuing shares, issuing debentures, issuing deposits. Because this financial source is within the organization and require only shareholders approval in general meeting. Next point, easy method. It is very easy for the company to retain earnings as a source of funds to raise finance through retained earnings. Company require to accumulate its profits of past previous years and create a sufficient reserve fund and obtain approval from shareholders by passing a special resolution in general meeting. Only this approval is required and not any lengthy procedure from any authorities, that is external authorities, is required to collect capital in the form of retained earnings. For raising finance does not require any major approval from other authorities. For raising finance does not require any major approval from other authorities. Next, no fixed obligations. When company capitalizes the profit, then what is meant by capitalization of profit? When company use its profit as a capital by issuing bonus shares to existing equity shareholder, known as capitalization of profit. Company issue bonus shares to equity shareholder as free of cost. The bonus shares are similar to ordinary equity shares or similar in nature of equity shares, so all the features which followed by equity shares also followed by bonus shares. So like one of the feature of equity shares, no obligation is created by equity shareholder in respect of getting dividend for the company. So like equity shares, bonus shares also create bonus shares also create same thing or no any fixed obligation regarding payment of dividend and repayment of capital at the time of winding up of the company. Here one thing is that company when issue bonus shares does not require to pay a fixed rate of dividend like preference share capital to bonus shareholder, because bonus shares are similar to equity shares and equity shareholders get fluctuating dividend and no any payment obligation regarding payment of dividend and repayment of capital at the time of winding up of the company. No dilute control. As we discuss, one of the feature of equity share, that is equity shareholder having controlling power all over the company. So retained earnings no dilute the control of equity shareholder on the working of the company. When company raise finance from this source, that time issue the bonus share to equity shareholder. Then what is by bonus share? Bonus share means the share which is issued by company at the time of capitalization of profit to existing equity shareholder, which is similar in nature of equity share, known as a bonus share, as a free of cost as a gift. The control of company after issuing bonus shares is remain with the company as the control is remain with the existing equity shareholder, so it means increase control of equity shareholder on the business. But one thing is there, due to increases the number of shares of existing equity shareholder, their voting power also increases, which control, it means increase control of equity shareholder on the business. So one of the basic or central idea of this point is that control of company is remain with the existing equity shareholder and there is no any dilution. Next, increase market value. When company use retained earnings as one of the internal source of raising capital or finance, company issue bonus shares to existing equity shareholders. Huge retained earnings are a good signal of strong financial position of the organization. Huge retained earnings are a good signal of strong financial position of the organization. Huge retained earnings are a good signal of strong financial position of the company. Due to bonus shares increases the market value of share and increases the wealth of share, because one of the principle of financial management to increase the market value of its owner's equity. So through retained earning, if company's retained earnings is huge, so it is a signal of that the company is in good financial or in sound financial condition. Due to bonus shares increases the market value of shares and increases the wealth of shareholders. Goodwill when company use proper management, proper business policies, proper strategies, result of all these things on the huge amount of profit, If company earns huge amount of profit through its transactions, then company declare dividend at highest rate, and retained earnings of the company is also large. As discussed earlier, if company having huge amount of retained earning, then it is a good signal of sound financial condition of the organization. Through the process of capitalization of profit, company issue bonus shares to existing equity shareholder as a free of cost. It creates positive impact that the company is performing well, company having large amount of retained earnings, so company's reserve is also high, company having the potential to come out of any situation because of company's retained earning is high, and as discussed earlier, it is the signal of good and sound financial condition. So all these things create a positive impact, positive image in the eye of people in the market, so which improve the reputation, goodwill, image of the organization. Last advantage, that is flexibility for utilizing funds. Bonus shares are similar like equity shares. All the features of equity shares is followed by bonus shares. So like equity shares, it does not create any obligation regarding use of funds, whether the funds of equity share is used for long-term purpose, for working capital purpose, or the funds generated through equity shares company use for long-term purpose, that is for fixed capital requirement or for working capital requirement. So there is flexibility in utilizing funds. Next, disadvantages of retained earnings. The first point, that is misuse of funds. Retained earnings do not create any obligation and also provide a flexibility for utilizing funds. So what happens in such situation? It is the chance for board of directors or the management to use funds for their own purpose or for unproductive purpose, or not use for the best interest of the company. So it is chance that the board of directors or the management of the company may be misuse the funds. Next, leads to monopolies. When company capitalize the profit, company issue bonus shares to equity shareholder as a free of cost. The bonus shares are similar of equity shares. due to bonus shares increases the voting power of equity shareholder, which due to bonus shares increases the voting power of equity shares. This means the power of existing equity shareholder, that is voting power of equity shareholder, is rises, which means there is more control on the organization. So the existing equity shareholder enjoy monopolies for controlling the company. Next point, over capitalization. For creating retained earnings, company adopt conservative dividend policy. And what is meant by conservative dividend policy? As we discussed earlier in last video lecture, conservative dividend policy means the company kept aside more amount as a reserve fund and declare less amount or less rate of dividend to equity shareholders. So what happened in this situation? If company wants to capitalize its profit by issuing bonus share, at that time it is chance or lot of chance of overcapitalization. Overcapitalization is a situation in which company collect capital or company having capital more than the requirement. In simple language means overcapitalization. So these things are dangerous for company survival. Tax evasion. For creating retained earnings, a company tries to avoid or minimize tax. So at that time company finds new ways for minimization of tax. Due to this, decrease the tax of government, it leads to tax evasion. Means if company wants to remain or remain that the retained earning amount of retained earning must be huge. So at that time company tries to find out various ways to minimize the tax. So impact of all this, that the government revenue will be less or the government get less amount from taxation. Which leads to tax evasion. Next, dissatisfaction. For creating retained earnings, company adopt conservative dividend policy. Then what is meant by conservative dividend policy? As I discussed earlier, shareholder get very less dividend, it brings out dissatisfaction among the shareholder. They may oppose this type of policy of conservative dividend policy of company. So the table shows the amount available for equity shareholders. Sales less all expenses, earning before interest tax less interest on borrowed capital or debt capital, earning before tax less corporate tax less earning after tax, dividend on preference share capital, and after payment of all these things, in the last, this amount is available to equity shareholder. This amount is available to equity shareholder. So from these earnings or available amount to equity shareholders, the amount is again divided into two parts. One for retained earnings, how much amount to be kept as a retained earnings, and how much amount to be distributed as a dividend. So these are the disadvantages of retained earnings. For today I stop here. From next lecture we start. Next source of capital, that is borrowed capital. If you find this video is helpful to you, then please subscribe my channel Sridesh 999. Thanks for watching.